Hey guys, so I wanted to show you a little trick that I've found when printing parts that are quite thin and flexible. I've got the gear door here, or at least part of the gear door here for the 1100mm PC21, and you can see in the orientation that we've printed it, it's quite flexible and it'll break pretty much any time anything touches it. So I've kind of found this new trick to make it stiffer without adding hardly any weight to it or any sort of disturbing the surface of it. So I'm just going to show you guys how I work that today. What you want to do is just take some regular tissues. I've just got some here, and I've traced over the area that I want to either brace up or repair. Put it over that face there. Make sure it's nice and flat. You might need to sand the surface if it's not perfectly flat, and then you just want to take some regular super glue, or Sekundenkleber as it's called here in Germany, and just gently drop it over the surface. You'll see it sort of wets it out, kind of like fiberglassing. And then, okay, it looks like I've got enough there. And then just with some kind of surface, you just want to gently knead it into the surface of it so that it's completely covers the tissue paper that you've got. And you want it to be nice and flat. You don't really want any of the edges to be sticking up. And then you can take just a spare tissue and just gently and quickly dab it to get rid of any of the excess super glue, unless you want to put a second layer on, in which case you can just do that straight away. And you can see there, I don't know if you guys can see that. There we go, we've got a layer there. You can see the slight difference between the layer lines here and the cured glue on there. And that is pretty good, but I'm going to add another layer to the other side, just so that it's doubly strong. Okay, so I've got my second piece here. I'm just going to lay it over the area that I want to cover, and then starting at this corner here, just going to drop it down and wet it out all the way to the end. And then just push it into the corners a bit. It's kind of like fiberglassing, but it's a lot quicker and a lot cheaper, I think. So there we go, that's looking pretty good. Just have a quick look at it, make sure it's all fine there. Looks pretty good. So now I'm going to get my tissue and just get rid of any of the excess. You don't want to leave the tissue on there for too long when you're trying to dry it out, because if the super glue dries too quickly, you'll glue this to this, and that's not what you want. Alright, cool, let's have a quick look at that. That looks pretty slick. So just because I think this part is maybe needing it a little bit more, I'm going to add a second layer to the front and back. So I'm just going to lay it on. Once it's dry, lay it on like that. Make sure it's flat and sitting within the boundaries. Looks pretty good. And then just again drop more CA on there. Okay, looking good. Just going to dab it down a bit. Oops, try not to move it. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Get rid of your excess. Now I found the trick with this is to just do one layer at a time. If you try to do too many layers at once, as the super glue dries, I believe it has what's called a exothermic reaction and generates a lot of heat, and you can actually melt your part if you're unlucky. So I'm going to flip it over and try and do this the second side now. It's pretty dry. One thing to note with this, guys, is it's quite good for going around relatively flat surface or basic curves, but for doing complex curves, such as in this little gap here, in this little section here where the gear door gets a bit thicker as I've got it braced, it goes around a sort of a complex curve there, and the tissue doesn't form to it as well as something like fiberglass might. It's a bit more rigid in the cloth. So yeah, just something to watch out for in its ability to form to the complex curves. Okay, so here we got the final product. You can see there's not really much in the way of extra thickness added to the part. You can sand this down as well, which is pretty cool. Once it's really dry, it's rock hard. And you can just have a see here that now there's not much flex to that at all, and it's basically the exact same weight. So I'm going to sand it down later and then paint it up. I've also used this technique for repairing the 1100mm PC21 due to a vibration in the propeller while I was testing it. So on the ground here, the motor and firewall had a rapid unscheduled disassembly and flew itself across the room. Yeah, and as you can see, I've used this technique to reinforce the repair on the nose here. It doesn't really show much. I haven't sanded it yet, but I will do before painting it. And yeah, I've flown it now 3 or 4 times. Balanced the propeller obviously, but it's yeah, much stronger. I've also put a few layers on the inside as well, so pretty cool.